The Steelers will have a new starting quarterback, running back, and wide receiver one this season as they turn to Aaron Rodgers, DK Metcalf, and Kaleb Johnson to fix their recent pitiful offense. We discuss the top three storylines for the Pittsburgh Steelers entering 2025 on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst with NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting for sportingnews.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. We are going to discuss the Pittsburgh Steelers today and the top three storylines entering this season. And they've made a lot of changes, right? They changed out Russell Wilson for Aaron Rodgers, changed out George Pickens for DK Metcalf, and changed out Najee Harris for Kaleb Johnson, who they drafted in the third round. Now, I mean, it seems like maybe it's a slight upgrade across the board, but I don't know how much of an upgrade it will be. The Steelers offense has been struggling ever since Ben Roethlisberger retired, or even slightly before that. But let's start with DK Metcalf's upside with Aaron Rodgers now that he officially signed there, because he's currently ranked as the wide receiver 24. He was the wide receiver 33 in average scoring last year at just 10.6 points per game. Wide receiver 20 on average in 2023, wide receiver 27 in 2022, wide receiver 20 in 2021, and then he had his big season in 2021. He was the wide receiver 10. Do you think his ranking is fair, or should he be pushed up a little bit now that Rodgers is there in Pittsburgh?
Yeah, I'd say DK Metcalf is one of the hardest guys to rank anywhere across the board, any position, any team, you name it, because you just don't know how he's going to function in this offense. His quarterback is arriving so late. I know it's still in time for mandatory minicamp, and they've unofficially Rodgers and Metcalf throwing the ball around, but that's a lot different than actually getting on the field together, developing that chemistry. And again, wide receiver 33 last year in his final season in Seattle. The good news for DK Metcalf is there's not a lot of competition. The bad news is he still is a very inefficient receiver. He's a big play guy that scores a lot of touchdowns, but he's got to improve that catch rate. We know drops have been a big issue where he's been that very inconsistent receiver. Overall, he should be more dominant in the red zone. He's not. He should be a guy that is killing it with big plays all the time. We don't see that a lot from DK Metcalf, mainly because again, everyone's enamored with his physique and how big and strong and fast he is, which is great, but you still have to catch the ball and make the plays. And that's been the one knock on DK Metcalf, and maybe what's kept him from being a truly elite wide receiver, reality or fantasy-wise, in the NFL. That said, he's a really good fit for what they want to do. It's not like the headaches are going to be totally gone from what they had with George Pickens or even Deontay Johnson to some degree, but he's going to get the ball. So he's not going to have to demand, hey, throw the ball to me, because he's the guy now. There's no more Pickens. He's on the move to Dallas. So it's like a really big drop-off, and we'll explore whether they have any other receivers you really want to even consider in your drafts a little later in the show. But Rodgers and Metcalf would seem to make sense as a good combination, because Rodgers still has a strong arm, even though he's worn down in a lot of areas. He can still push the ball downfield, and that's what Metcalf does the best, to stretch the field. So he should see a good chunk of the targets, right? With Pickens gone, he should basically step into that role. But we know Pickens can only take advantage of that as a wide receiver 3. The difference is Rodgers is going to be a lot more focused on passing. When Justin Fields was in there, he was running quite a bit. Russell Wilson was also tentative to throw the ball downfield, and he was working the middle of the field. Rodgers will be aggressive in getting the ball. So I do like that ranking. I think right now he's not a bad value there at wide receiver 24, because he does carry a lot of upside. And again, this is only 9 spots from what he did last year. And if you look at it overall, look, he didn't have the best with Geno Smith. We saw it kind of develop with Jackson Smith-Njigba, that chemistry. So he needed a little bit of a change of scene. So I think he can only go up here. 9 spots is kind of a reasonable thing now that he has a legitimate quarterback in Rodgers. I mean, the bigger question is, how many points is Rodgers going to put up where Metcalf can have a good percentage of that?
Yeah, and I don't even think Rodgers has to have this great year for Metcalf to come through at his draft cost or even ahead of it. Last year, it was a lower year for him, but that knee injury, I do think had a big part of it in it. Weeks 1 through 7 before the knee injury, he was averaging 12.6 points per game, which is actually around like his average outside of that one huge year from him. Like a 12.6 is a pretty solid fantasy season for any wide receiver, but also just it's pretty much DK Metcalf's average. When he missed a couple games after the knee injury, came back after the week 10 bye, and then averaged only 8.7 points per game the rest of the way. Also, just looking at the targets weren't consistent for him last year, but in the 10 games, he had at least 6 targets last season. Again, he averaged 12.3 points per game. That's exactly what we'd want from him this year. George Pickens last year averaged over 7 targets per game. You'd fully expect DK Metcalf to at least be seeing 6 or more targets each game when there's really no other good playmakers in this offense at the moment. So I actually think Metcalf can be a really good value. Right now it's going DK Metcalf and then Devonta Smith right after him. I do think that's kind of a hard choice. Devonta Smith's clearly the wide receiver 2 on his team, while DK Metcalf is clearly the wide receiver 1. But the Eagles' offense is just so smoother. We know what we're going to get from that. Which way would you go? Because I do think Metcalf offers more upside than Devonta Smith.
Yeah, if we were still talking about Mason Rudolph throwing to DK Metcalf, I think you would feel a lot more confident with Devonta Smith. But this is a good segue, Michelle, because Aaron Rodgers, he wasn't as bad as people thought last season. I mean, great. They didn't win a lot of games, and he was a headache, and wanted to get Devontae Adams in there. It was a mistake. Everyone was focused on the Jets' record, but at the same time, the Jets fell apart in many other ways. Their defense didn't come through as expected. Their running game also wasn't there. But when you look at Rodgers' numbers, he actually was the QB 30 there right now in the rankings, but he was QB 22 last season, just behind Anthony Richardson. And we think he had a pretty bust year, but then ahead of Dak Prescott, Caleb Williams, Trevor Lawrence. That's not like the worst, right? And he still ended up with 28 touchdown passes. I know in the era of cheat codes where you give him almost nothing in terms of the rushing column, had just barely over 100 yards rushing last year for the Jets coming off that Achilles. You figure as he gets older, that's going to become less and less of a factor. It was not bad, right? I mean, he had 3,897 yards, only 11 interceptions. When you look last year, Michelle, by the way, the combination of Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, 3,508 yards, 21 TDs, 6 TDs. The difference was, and what would have made them a combined QB 10, we can't give to Rodgers, which was 444 yards rushing and 7 TDs on the ground. That is not happening for Aaron Rodgers. So you almost have to claim close to a 0 there, right? You might get 4 to 20 points out of Rodgers in that spot, but you're not going to get that massive scoring output that you had. I mean, which is basically almost to 90 points from those two elements last year in fantasy. So you have to just look at the passing part. Can he throw for more than 21 TDs in this offense? We would hope so, right? I mean, 21 is a very low number over the course of all those games, and Justin Fields was a lot dedicated to running. So if he can boost it to 25 even, that should be good news for DK Metcalf. And now with Rodgers, again, if you pull away those rushing numbers, then you're looking at way down there, QB 20 from what you saw from Fields and Wilson. So I'd say individually, that means you can't go after Rodgers if his numbers hover around the same spot. But that's what we want for DK Metcalf to be effective. We don't want Rodgers to take off and run. We want him to throw a little bit more. So I do think Metcalf, all things considered, Rodgers may not be a good standalone value, but he's going to help DK put up the numbers.
Yeah, I think if you're in a super flex league and you want to grab 3 quarterbacks, then Rodgers can be that, solid third quarterback. You can play him in good matchups. I mean, Steelers quarterbacks have not been good for so long. Yeah. It's either the Steelers organization right now, their lack of, elite weapons. Maybe Rodgers fixes that, but I really don't have too much interest in him in fantasy because you brought up the rushing's just not there at all. So you need him to come through with the passing touchdowns. Maybe it happens. It's not something I want to rely on as a starting quarterback if I'm in a 1 quarterback league, but 2 quarterback league, sure. As your, low end second guy or your third quarterback. I will say he had last year 24 drops for Rodgers last season. That was tied for the third most among quarterbacks. Only Baker Mayfield and Justin Herbert had more drops from their receivers last season. So we'll see if the Steelers receivers can catch more balls for Rodgers this upcoming year. Now, I want to talk about this running game. We will get to who in the world is going to be the second target on the Steelers offense outside of DK Metcalf. But first, let's get into the running back room because Kaleb Johnson, they drafted in the third round. They still have Jaylen Warren. One of these guys are going to come through, but which one is it? We'll discuss right after a quick break.
All right, the NBA playoffs are in full swing. We're actually at the NBA Finals. It's tied 1-1 between the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Indiana Pacers. It's exciting with these teams going back and forth, a couple blowouts here. And I think this series could go any which way. And this is a good time to get on it because every night has delivered highlight-worthy performances, whether it's from Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, Tyrese Halliburton, major momentum shifts. We saw that. We keep writing off these teams, and they keep coming through with these can't-miss moments, whether it's game-winning shot or breakout players like we've seen with SGA and Halliburton. There's never been a better time to get on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart during the NBA Finals and win big. So get in on it right now because you can show what you know here with Halliburton, SGA, play some parlays with their teammates. All good stuff there. So if you're new to FanDuel, it's even better because it's a perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you would get $200 in bonus bets. That's right, only at FanDuel.com. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Michelle, let's get into Kaleb Johnson. We knew the Steelers were going to draft a running back pretty high. They did. They said goodbye to Najee Harris, signed with the Chargers, and Jaylen Warren is still on this roster. So, first of all, what do we expect from Kaleb Johnson in terms of his skill set, and can he get that big workload left behind by Harris?
Listen, I think he has the body and the skill set to be a workhorse back in the NFL. Monster year last year with over 1,500 rushing yards and 21 rushing touchdowns in a 12-game season at Iowa. So we know the production's there, a ton of yards after contact as well. And we also know there's going to be a ton of work to go around. So Najee Harris last year, no, he wasn't great for fantasy, right? Only 11 fantasy points per game. That was 25th among running backs on average. But the Steelers averaged the fourth most carries per game in the NFL last year, behind only the Eagles, Ravens, and Lions. Well, Saquon Barkley for the Eagles, Jahmyr Gibbs for the Lions, and Derrick Henry for the Ravens. All were top three fantasy running backs. Well, Najee Harris was the running back 25. Najee Harris had the seventh most carries in the league last year. All the top six guys ahead of him averaged 16 points per game, 16 or more points per game. Again, Najee was at 11. So there is opportunity in this offense, in an Arthur Smith run-heavy offense, to be, just a workhorse running back and great for fantasy. It just comes down to, do they give that opportunity to Jaylen Warren to start the year and wait for him to maybe fail or succeed before they move on to Kaleb Johnson, or do they just, give it to Kaleb Johnson? Because they're ranked really close right now in consensus ranks. So, there's confusion across the industry with Kaleb Johnson at running back 29. In consensus ranks, and Jaylen Warren at running back 32. I lean the Kaleb Johnson side just because I think he's the more skilled running back, has just more of the profile to be a workhorse back, while Jaylen Warren is that change of pace back. But I could see it being a slow start to the season for Kaleb Johnson.
Yeah, I could definitely see them being a little bit concerned and making sure that he's got the pass protection down, because now you have an older and mobile quarterback there in Rodgers, unlike Justin Fields or Russell Wilson, who could take off and run and kind of save themselves that way. So they're going to be worried about the little things with Kaleb Johnson. Can he stay on the field for third downs, whether he's pass blocking or pass route running, right? So any of those things that you look at with Kaleb, I think when you look at his, quote, scouting profile, you would say, oh, he's a power back, right? This is why they drafted him. And it would make sense because Najee Harris was drafted to be a strong power back. And you look at Mike Tomlin, he likes having these type of guys around, even though they're not always as effective. But the Steelers like to have that power back in general. So Kaleb Johnson would seem to take care of a lot of the early down work, the red zone stuff, the short yardage, all that good stuff. So the question is, how much is he going to extend into the passing game, right? And cut into what Jaylen Warren can do. So Michelle's right. He could be eased into that phase, right? Because they have Warren. Warren has been effective when he gets the change of pace touches. It's not like, hey, let's raise the volume for Warren. If they had wanted to do that, Michelle, they would have drafted a complimentary back and not somebody they thought could carry the workload. So I'm all in on now. Kaleb Johnson, again, he's a good stash. I think he starts out as a flex play for you before developing into a pretty reliable RB2. It's just going to be how the season progresses. And as Rodgers gets in there, it gives you some legitimate to downfield passing game. That's also going to help open up the running game.
Yeah, I just think with Jaylen Warren, we saw at times last year, because Najee Harris was a disappointment, that they're trying to get Warren more involved. But in the games, like there was only 3 games last year that he had at least 12 carries, and his average just plummets, right? The reason why he's been so explosive and coming up with these big plays is because he's that change of pace back. Once they gave him like a big workload in any given game, or not even, I mean, it's not even that big of a workload, but 12 plus carries, he averaged 4.2 yards per carry. That's much different than his average of over 5 in his career. So I just don't think he has that in him to be a 250 touch guy in any given year.
Mm-hmm.
While Kaleb Johnson is more of that question mark. I think he might be on a good amount of my teams because of his ranking right now at running back 29. I mean, that's one of the furthest down for any of the starting running backs that we expect to have a big workload. Like you're going to be choosing between Kaleb Johnson, Brian Robinson, Tyrone Tracy Jr. Rank those 3 guys for me.
Oh boy, that's a tough one. But I would do like Kaleb Johnson because I know what his role is going to be. Those guys have more competition and worry, where I don't think Jaylen Warren is competition. He's got a cap role in this offense. They want to just fill in what we had with Najee Harris. He had borderline RB2 production last year, just out of it with the flex with his workload. So again, it's a little bit more direct, right? Less variables here. We know Harris is gone. Johnson is in to replace him. The offense is same with Arthur Smith. They should be better offensively overall, throwing the ball with Aaron Rodgers. They should have less rushing yards available from the quarterback, right? So that should put more rushing effort and checkdowns as well to the running back. So it all lines up really well for Kaleb Johnson, I think. And again, it's a tough thing, right? Do you want to go with a guy that's in a sharing situation, or number 2, another one? Or do you want to go, when we talked about receiver, with Metcalf, or here with Johnson? I just think the Steelers' compression of the workload and the usage is going to really play in the favor of both of these guys.
Yeah, I mean, this is a hard little area to try to navigate here with running backs that he's in. He's right around Travion Henderson, who has to share with Ramondre Stevenson, Isaiah Pacheco, who's not been a very great fantasy back as of late, and, inconsistent. RJ Harvey, another rookie in a similar situation as Kaleb Johnson, but he just got competition with J.K. Dobbins. And then we were talking about, Quinton Junkins. Maybe he has the best situation in that backfield, pretty much owning it. But that's going to be a hard group to decide between. And Kaleb Johnson, I think, is worth the risk right there, because if he gets the workload, it's available. I mean, the Steelers are going to run the ball a ton. That's what they want to do. That's what Arthur Smith wants to do. So there's going to be opportunities. It comes down to, can Aaron Rodgers elevate this offense where there's more scoring opportunities around the goal line? And, can he be trusted in the passing game as a receiver and as a blocker? So those are a couple things that might limit him to start the year, but I do think he's going to end up being a good value throughout the entire season. We're now going to move on to trying to figure out, is there another viable fantasy receiver asset in this offense, whether it be tight end or wide receiver? Because, I mean, Aaron Rodgers should be able to find a second guy, but he's going to be thrown to Calvin Austin or Robert Woods or Roman Wilson, Pat Freiermuth, who hasn't done much for fantasy. So we'll get into that to finish up today's show right after a quick break. Say goodbye to sticky notes, scribbled plans on the fridge, and overlapping calendar invites. The Skylight Calendar is here to bring clarity to the chaos and help families stay organized without the stress. This sleek digital display syncs with your existing calendars, Google, Apple, Outlook, and more, making it simple to track appointments, practices, dinners, and reminders all in one easy step. It eliminates the excuse of I didn't know, to just making it your family's daily routine. And it just keeps everyone in order, and it keeps everything on a 15-inch HD screen to help you stay focused and less overwhelmed. Right now, Skylight is offering our listeners $30 off their 15-inch calendars by going to skylightcal.com/NFL. Go to skylightcal.com/NFL for $30 off your 15-inch calendar. That's skylightcal.com/NFL. All right, before we finish up today's show, I want to remind everyone to listen to Locked On NFL Scouting. The NFL draft is over, but the roster moves and news never stop. Hosts Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make the most informed NFL fan make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. So the Steelers' other weapons outside of DK Metcalf and, the running backs, I mean, they seem bleak right now. And that's how it seems in the consensus rankings as well. Calvin Austin's the next highest guy at wide receiver 83 in the rankings. And I think that's kind of fair because he was the wide receiver 82 on average last year. Roman Wilson sitting as a wide receiver 94. We only got to see him play 5 snaps in his rookie season, but he was a 3rd-round draft pick last year. Dealt with a lot of injuries last season. And then Pat Freiermuth is sitting here at the tight end 18. He was a tight end 13 on average last season. And I mean, to be fair to Pat Freiermuth, he did lead the Steelers in receptions last year. But again, leading the team in receptions brought him to tight end 13 on average. So still very underwhelming. If you had to take a shot on one of these guys, Vinny, who are you going with? Or are you just completely staying away from this group?
Well, the one thing I would do is pay very close attention to Aaron Rodgers and what he's doing in minicamp, all the reports, watch ESPN, all the hype of what he's doing, right? And be careful and watch who he's throwing to, who he likes, because we know going back to Green Bay, Aaron Rodgers likes to have a circle of trust. And if you're in a circle of trust and he believes that you're going to run the right route, turn around and catch the ball that he's rifling in there, he's going to throw to you. But if you disappoint him and drop a ball or run the wrong route or you're inexperienced, he's over with you, right? And we know that, right? He carried over Allen Lazard, Devontae Adams, Randall Cobb. They all came with him because they were in a circle of trust. We've also seen him have some big years, a Robert Tonyan type season, Jermichael Finley, some of these dudes at tight end. So if I'm going to take a shot, it's Pat Freiermuth. I know he's not exciting. And Michelle knows that he's kind of my favorite Steelers offensive weapon. So when I could do that, I think he's a guy that would fit perfectly with Rodgers. Like, you guys are young. I don't trust Austin all the time. I'm not sure about this Roman Wilson kid who basically is a rookie to me. So I'm going to go to the tight end. I am already stretching the field with DK, who I trust, throwing the ball to. We're a run-heavy team. And we know that Arthur Smith is going to be a run-heavy team. We don't need a lot of dudes to produce in the passing game. So I'm feeling Freiermuth a little bit. But when I say that, I'm feeling him as one of those tight end 12s. Like you just put in at the bottom. He's going to go lower than that in a lot of leagues because of he's Pat Freiermuth and he's not exciting. But if you want some sneaky production, and we've seen the touchdown upside, Robert Tonyan did have double digits, right, with Aaron Rodgers. He wasn't very good, right? We've seen Robert Tonyan's career basically one and done. He was a fantasy guy for that 1 year because he scored a lot. I could see that happening again. I'm not going to be excited about it, but history says Rodgers is more likely to trust somebody like that, a veteran, than one of these young guys he's still trying to work it out with.
That's fine and all. But again, Freiermuth led the team in receptions and receiving touchdowns last year. And I mean, Freiermuth has been nothing but consistent. I mean, consistently not good for fantasy, I should say. Yeah. In his 4 seasons, this is where he's finished in points per game. Or this is his points per game average. 7.6, 7.3, 5.1 in 2023, his worst year, 7.9. So that's what you're going to get from him. Somewhere in the 7 to 8 points per game range. I just there's no upside of taking him. I'm clearly staying away from Pat Freiermuth. I always have, always will. I just do not care to draft him. If I'm going to take a shot on one of these wide receivers, I'm going to be looking out for, camp news, right? Who's stepping up. It's going to be Roman Wilson that I'm eyeing the most. You might not even have to draft him. Just keep an eye on him because he's going undrafted. But He did not get a chance to play last year in his rookie season. They drafted him in the 3rd round. He played just 5 snaps. He got hurt in their first padded practice last offseason. Didn't make his NFL debut until week 6. Played 5 snaps before he hurt his hamstring, and then they kind of just shut him down the rest of the year. But we saw he was he had the skill set to be an outside, really good route runner, wide receiver at Michigan. Led that team with 12 receiving touchdowns with JJ McCarthy. So I'm excited to see what Roman Wilson can do. And all he has to do is beat out Robert Woods for the outside job, right? With Aaron Rodgers. So definitely going to keep an eye on him. He's, like I said, going highly undrafted right now. We'll see if he can make a name for himself this training camp and possibly, get on our fantasy radar, but keep an eye out on him. Calvin Austin makes the big plays, and that's cool, but you never really know when they're going to come. And I mean, he had so many games he had 6 games with fewer than 10 receiving yards last year. Just a few games with more than 50 yards and a bunch of, nothing in between there as well. So staying away from Calvin Austin completely. Are you interested in Roman Wilson whatsoever?
I would think about Roman Wilson, but again, I want to wait and see a little bit because again, Rodgers, this is the thing where he did the disservice, coming in so late into the mix. Like, I wish he was there early in the offseason to see what's going on with some of these receivers. I mean, again, we've seen him throw a little bit with Metcalf, but watch that very carefully because Wilson is capable, right? He was a veteran receiver. He's seen a lot of action at Michigan. I think I would trust him more than Austin for sure to be reliable. As you mentioned, Austin's a big play guy, so that would lead to him being inconsistent with Rodgers. Well, I think Wilson, short area guy, could catch a lot of balls here. So I'd watch that. I'm totally down with it. Pat Freiermuth, not exciting, but if you needed a tight end too, you could go there. But if you're going to go for the upside pick and a dart throw, I think Wilson is the way to go, either as a very late draft pick, depending how big your league is, or a priority free agent. But again, this is when you pay attention to the reports. And thankfully, Michelle, unlike a lot of other teams, the Steelers actually have some good reporters, so we can track a little bit more of what they're doing. So again, this is going to be very crucial through minicamp to see so-and-so's impressing Rodgers. Rodgers is talking about this guy. Just pay attention to all that because it does mean something in terms of where he's going to put the ball a lot when it's not going to DK Metcalf, Kaleb Johnson, or Jalen Warren.
Yep, absolutely. And yeah, go follow Brooke Pryor on X because
definitely.
She's a Steelers reporter. She's fantastic. She's a good friend of mine as well. And she will keep us up to date with whoever is balling out in training camp and stepping up to be Aaron Rodgers' second target. That is it for today's episode. I want to thank you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. We will be back on Friday talking about the Cincinnati Bengals. We'll talk to you then. Bye, y'all.